Hey everyone, welcome to the moon forecast for the full moon we have coming up here on August 30th. It's coming to us at 7 degrees of Pisces and is bringing in some interesting energy. I'm Kendall with the Bohemian Tarot Girl and Wild Reawakening, and this is my co-host Amy. Amy, give a shout out for yourself.
Hi, I'm Amy. I'm an intuitive energy coach and moon circle leader with Wild Reawakening. And yeah, like you said, this is going to be a really, really interesting full moon that we have coming up.
It,
Um,
it really is.
yeah. Did we talk about what time that was happening?
No, so it's happening at 6:35 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and if you're on the East Coast, 9:35 Eastern. So just remember to adjust it for whatever time zone that you sit in. You can also check out our posts online at Facebook if you want to see some of the other times that we have listed there. Just real interesting energy. We have a bunch of planets in retrograde right now, and I think that's pulling in with this huge blue moon. So blue moon is, it happens only once in a while because it's that second full moon in the month of August. How are you feeling in general about that? I feel like whenever that
Oh
comes up,
gosh,
it's like,
there's so much to talk about with this as usual, because it's never just moon energy, but it just feels like, and I always tend to look at what is happening in what energy I'm feeling before I even look at what is actually happening with the planets. And I think that that's something that's been really useful as we've been doing this is you kind of, the more that you start following the energies, you start noticing patterns and the way things feel within yourself. And then you can go back and look at the astrology and be like, okay, now that makes sense, instead of doing it the other way where you anticipate
yes.
based on what you're looking at the planets. Um, so you kind of create this like dialogue between your energy and what's actually happening in the earth. So I started noticing probably a week ago that there were a couple things that shifted. One, I became really introspective. Um, like extremely introspective about a lot of different parts of my life, about my past, about my childhood. Like a lot of stuff that I thought I had already worked through started coming up to the surface. So if you notice that for yourself, that is kind of attached to the energy that has been evolving over the last couple of weeks. The other thing is I felt like the energy to create and move forward kind of came to a standstill. Like it was like
Mm.
being stuck in this mud and not having the type of clarity I prefer to have when I'm making plans or creating business stuff or even like figuring out which direction I want to move next in life. Um, so we're going to talk a little bit more about why that's happening, but I would encourage you to really tap into how you've been feeling lately and what you've been noticing, and just take a little brief moment to see where you're at before we really like get full blown into what is happening in the planets.
Yeah, I think that relates to that that blue moon piece though, because when I think about that happening, it's like a wrap up, kind of like collection of things that have been going on in your life, and you're going to feel that energy very extremely. And so, you mentioned there are things that are popping up that you needed to go ahead and heal and process and let go of within that time frame that don't necessarily maybe directly relate to some of the energy that's going on. It's just something that has been in your your process of what's going on, and now it's kind of popping up in this time because with this it's really asking us to take that step back and heal those last parts with that second phase of it. So that's what I always look out, when I look for during this type of moon energy that's coming up right now, is really that like last bit of energy to push through some things that are really difficult.
Yeah. And we have, I mean, it's a Pisces full moon. And so that means that the sun and the moon are in opposite places in the sky. sun being in Virgo, which is very analytical and very precise and detail oriented, and wants to plan and have things be in its physical reality. And then you have the duality of this Pisces moon coming in, which is already, I mean, moon energy is like the feminine and the intuitive and kind of what's hidden. And we have it in Pisces, which is the 12th sign of the zodiac, which is ruled by Neptune, which is already, I mean, all of those things are already like keeping things kind of hidden, going internal, being intuitive, and having not a solid form or concreteness to it. And so we have all of that going on, and it's coming in and kind of obscuring whatever plans Virgo wants to create right now. And normally we enter Virgo season and it's like, you know, school's beginning and life is getting back into more of a routine. And here comes this Pisces new moon or full moon. And it's adding an element of mystery and illusionment, and things not being very clear at the moment. And one of the themes that I was recently talking about on my personal page, which is why I'm bringing it up now, is because all of that stuff is kind of relating to the energy, is that it's kind of like going on this blind trust walk right now. And you can't see where you're going. You can't see the path ahead. You just put one foot in front of the other. And the energy right now is really focused on having a certain level of trust in the universe, trust in yourself, and really, really honing into your intuition right now to lead you through this kind of like fogginess that has appeared on this pathway. Yep. And especially with information that may be coming out in the news or information you might receive from outside sources, one of the best things that you can do right now, and we always say this, is really check yourself and check your intuitive capabilities and see if that resonates true or not. Like being in touch with what you believe is right and your own intuition and your own path, and not getting kind of led astray by the outside noise, is going to be super important during this time. So I don't know what's going to happen. Kendall and I were just talking about how it feels like something's on the verge of happening. And it could be personal, it could be global. It's, you know, this is a universal energy. So I would just really, really get clear on what you believe and what you know and what you trust within yourself.
Definitely. In general, during this time frame, like I feel like, you know, as we go through all these retrogrades that are happening till the end of January, we're really going to have to make sure that we're connecting with our higher self and making sure that we're making choices and decisions and accepting information in a fashion that aligns to ourselves, and that we're really checking in with ourselves and making sure that we're either okay and we feel comfortable with the information that comes in, and if we're not, then it's okay to separate ourselves from that and understand that it might not be the truth that's aligning with us. And so we just have to be aware of that, like Amy said, and it's just super important. And I think not falling down that rabbit hole, and really becoming depressed and focused in on that energy, and really focusing in on moving forward in a way to benefit yourself and really heal yourself during this time.
Yeah. And I think it's even more emphasized right now because full moon is, oh my gosh, let me make sure I have the right notes. Oh, Pisces, or Neptune is in Pisces right now, and it has been since 2011, which has really been helping us get in touch with our intuitive side and you know, that spiritual aspect of ourselves. And I don't know, like we were just talking before this, is that I've noticed a huge uptick since 2011 of people really wanting to focus more on their spirituality and develop their intuition, and people are starting to trust that more. But with it being retrograde,
I
as
know.
so many of the other planets are right now, um, Neptune, it being in Pisces, which is its home sign, it already has an element of illusionment to it. And so it's what happens, I think, sometimes with this energy in particular, is that you'll receive just enough truth to make it seem real,
Yeah.
but it's not the full truth. And it's probably an obscured truth. And there's also a form of manipulation that can occur with this type of energy. So just really, really kind of be devil's advocate and and look at what really makes sense to you at this time. And this could be in the form, it could be in the form of anything.
Yeah, no, I mean, it can be, um, it could be your relationships, it can be in the media, it can be in your work and career type focus. And so that's what you really need to think about is when that information is coming into you. And just because one certain thing, like Amy mentioned, is true, does not mean that that whole piece is. So if you're feeling uneasy about connecting with that piece of information, then it's okay to step back and really look at that. I mean, we have Venus retrograde with that South Node in Libra. And there's a lot of this relationship. It can be kind of like an explosion of the end. Like if you want to end something, and instead of being truthful about it, you can bring about an end by kind of bringing up things that are not necessarily the root cause of why you want to end something. There's some sabotage in it. So if you think about it from that aspect, we can kind of destroy some of the things that are in our life, not really necessarily based on the truth of the situation, where we can destroy it based on something that we're a little bit maybe like manipulating into creating a scenario. And so just be aware of that. That's the sort of energy that's happening right now, is that we can kind of blow things up and they really don't need to be blown up. Or we need to step back and just see the truth of why they need to end versus seeing just kind of this grandiose explosion of an event. So
What did we say? There are 6 planets in retrograde right now.
there's 6 or 7. I was just trying to count them here, but when this happens, it has a less than 1% occurrence when that goes on. And we just had Uranus on August 28th. Amy and I record this early, so it's happening like right now for us. Um, and that is happening right now. And that one actually goes all the way to the end of January, and that ends on January 27th, 2024. And with that energy, it's in Taurus, and Taurus is that grounded earth energy. And then we have Uranus, and that is kind of a disruptor of a lot of things on our physical plane. And it can be more of like the correlation to our government. And so you might see things like that are more in our outside physical life being really, you know, maybe hidden from us, and we're having to glean some information from it. And so just be aware that there's some unease, there's some things shifting right now. And we are just here to be aware of it and observe it. If you're being called in to do some action, then I think you will know when you're supposed to be drawn in to do it. So I wouldn't overly stress about it. I think it's more about being aware of that energy and not, um, jumping into things when we don't need to jump into things, creating fear around things that we don't need to create fear. So just be aware as things come up during this time period, not to dwell on that fear energy that I think we have going on right now. So,
And retrograde planets, I mean, it's really important when planets go into retrograde. We like to give Mercury a hard time when it's
yep.
retrograde, as it is right now, because that one always shakes up like transportation, communication, technology. gets a little glitchy and it messes with our day-to-day abilities to get things done, because
Hmm.
it's a planet of communication. But the outer planets, especially, like a lot of times they're retrograde half the year, so, depending on the cycle of the planet. And when planets go retrograde, one of the main purposes of that is to allow a period of time for integration. So when they're moving forward, there's so much change and shift happening in a certain type of energy. And so when they go retrograde, it's like going over past territory and getting a deeper, closer look at what's really happening and what needs to be done, and a little more focused. So you might feel some old energy start coming up. You might feel like you're revisiting things that you thought you had already cleared out. You might find that there are things that you kind of left on hold that are now needing more attention, and that you're also completing cycles. And, we have some planets. Is it Saturn, which is also retrograde right now in Pisces, is conjunct this moon. And Saturn is the taskmaster. Like, it kind of comes in, it's like the parent, and it's going to tell you what needs to be done. It doesn't have a sense of humor at all. I don't think Saturn and I we're not friends.
I'm with you, Amy.
It's like, no, you need to pay attention to this, and we're going to make it so that you can't ignore this anymore. And it being in Pisces, it doesn't really like Pisces energy, because Pisces just wants to go with the flow and be fluid and ignore reality.
Uh-huh.
You know, Pisces energy is that of it's the epitome of the escape artist. And here you have the taskmaster coming in, and it's not going to let Pisces get away with that. And so I think that there may be some things that show up around this moon where you're like, oh crap, I really need to handle this because it's become a problem. Or if I don't handle this now, it will become a problem. And so don't ignore the things that are demanding your attention, but it's also this energy of, because of all these other retrograde planets and it being an intuitive moon, it's not necessarily the energy for forcing things into motion. So, especially because we also, so many planets to talk about.
I know.
Mars is in Libra now. Mars and Libra do not necessarily enjoy each other's company.
Oh.
Libra is a very much go with the flow. Let's look at both sides. Let's not have to make decisions. And Mars, of course, wants to just rush into action. And Libra's like, no, wait, but what about this? And what about this? And what about this? I love Librans.
Uh-huh.
But they're not the people to ask who or what or not who, but they're not the ones to ask what you're going to have for dinner or where you're going to go. Like, you'll never get a straight answer because everything sounds like a good option.
100% it does.
So same with having a plan for moving forward. Nothing about this energy right now says, let's get to work and let's walk on this path right now. This is a very much observe, wait and see, use your intuition, but wait for the clarity to arrive before you decide to make big, bold moves. And we were talking about it, and I think that a lot of the energy starts to shift around the Virgo new moon, which was just in 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So,
no, I do. Yeah, I really do feel like this energy, I mean, in general, the full moon is about releasing. And I feel like we do have all this energy that's really kind of bottlenecked up at this point, with this super moon that is really asking us to really release any of that last stuff. And I don't know if I talked about the yod yet, but there's a yod with Neptune and Pluto trining the North Node, and Black Moon Lilith is sitting right there at the peak of it. And so that's all about your shadow work and really letting go of those last things. So it's that last bit of stuff that you haven't been dinging up during this time period that needs to come back and come out, and for you to really heal that piece. So I think there are probably some things that are coming up. I've noticed an influx of um, dreaming. I don't usually dream a lot. And so when I start going through a phase where I start dreaming a lot, and that's definitely happening right now. Um, there are pieces in my dreams that obviously my subconscious is asking me to revisit and look at. And so for me, that's my connection for me to do some work to clear some energies out, because I'm receiving those messages subconsciously and asking them to heal and move along with them. So pay attention to those pieces in your life. If your subconscious is bringing those pieces to you, and you can call it your subconscious or your higher self, you can call it however you connect with it. Just know that those pieces are probably going to be brought to you, and they're going to be brought to you because you need to heal them. And there's some piece of them that you have not let go of it. So, it's interesting things that, like you said, that might have come up from years ago that you thought you have healed. Here they are coming back out and being like, hey, there's still this piece that you're holding on to, and I need you to kind of relook at it and finally let that piece go. And I really feel like that's really the focus of what this moon energy is all about.
Oh, yeah. It's a deep internal process that's coming through. And like you said, dreams, I don't know, my dreams have been so vivid and like bizarre
Yeah.
and very like time warpy. Like I can fall asleep for an hour and it feels like it's been 10. And then
Mm-hmm.
I'm okay, what, like, I don't know, visiting different dimensions or past life. Or, I mean, so it might be a good time actually to use like write down your dreams in a journal or do some intuitive writing. That's actually been coming up a lot for me lately. I've been writing way more than I usually do, but it's like all of a sudden I have this stream of thought that just seems to need to get out somewhere. And that's kind of cathartic. It's, it's
Yeah.
good to put some form to these thoughts that keep swirling. So
100%. I mean, well, by doing that, it allows you to reconnect with that energy when you need to. I mean, we were talking about how this connects to, was it the Virgo new moon, but from March, right? So that past energy. And so being able to look back at that time and seeing what you were working on during that time and
oh
really
yeah, the Virgo full moon, which
full
was
moon, sorry.
7.
Yeah.
And so we always talk about moon cycles happening in different rates. And we have, the new moon to the full moon, which is 2 weeks, and then full moon to new moon, which is 2 weeks. But then we have, this is a cycle too, where we look back at the past full moon in Virgo when this energy was flip-flopped. And I was looking at my notes for that. And one of the things it was talking about was kind of having all of these dreams and putting some concreteness to it. And now we have this need or this want or desire to have some plan or some concreteness, but really needing to let the intuitive side kind of mesh a little bit more,
Mm-hmm.
and see what's coming through. Pisces is so good. Pisces energy and Pisces moon, like it's a water sign. And so there's so much emotion and fluidity and introspection and intuition to it. Like it's a really beautiful energy, but it also is not the type of energy to create solid plans around. So because it's shifty.
It really is. Yeah. It can be a difficult if you're trying to get things going. This is maybe not quite your moment. Definitely, waiting till after that Mercury retrograde and we're approaching that new moon and setting those intentions during the new moon to move forward on some pieces. That's a great time. But, this time with this full moon, I would concentrate on really what needs to be healed and what you're really coming, what's bubbling up to the surface and really asking you to be looked at again, because that is the piece that you're kind of like dragging a bag behind you full of your baggage, right? Your old baggage. And that's what you keep dragging it along with you in this process. And this is the moon that's really asking you to let that go. Did we talk about Venus retrograde already?
We've been talking about it, but it is ending on the 3rd or the 4th of September. It's still going to be in Leo because it's going to have to backtrack again through Leo to kind of catch up with everything. But um, a lot of the retrograde stuff is going to dissolve. and, and it's funny because most people in the past have never really paid much attention to Venus retrograde. And now I'm seeing on the internet all over the place people wondering about Venus retrograde and why, this relationship's not working, or why this person is returning to their field. Or there was another question someone asked, is it okay to get engaged during Venus retrograde? And I don't think that there's a right or a wrong, but just be aware that whatever transpires during Venus retrograde may need to be revisited in the future. There may be clarity that comes up later on that you weren't aware of or expecting while it was retrograde. So if you start a new relationship now, there may be a period where you're like, this isn't exactly what I thought it was. And that could be good or bad, depending on the situation. But yeah.
I mean, yeah, whenever, you're thinking about that piece, I do think you have to go with your intuition and, really feel out if it's the right moment in time for you to be doing something. And in general, during the retrograde times, that's usually a time to relook and look at situations. And so always paying attention to that piece and making sure that, when we talk about relationships, that we're not forming the same relationships, and we're not re-entering the same cycle again, that we're making sure that we're stepping into the new cycle that we want that better aligns with us. And I think that's really the key, is making sure that when you're moving forward, you're actually moving forward and that you're not reliving a past cycle just with different people. So,
yeah. I mean, I have also heard about the Venus retrograde that if something has lasted through the retrograde, that you most likely were healing something or bringing something to light that needed help in order to get it through. And that there were a lot of endings during Venus retrograde. I saw them all over the place. But the things that ended were the things that absolutely needed to end. So just your own situation is going to be unique. See where you're at. But I mean, there's different energies. And when you start paying attention to them, like I was having a discussion with a friend, I would never buy a car during Mercury retrograde.
no.
And they agreed with me, but they also said that they did buy a car during Mercury retrograde. And while the car is not the issue, the actual process of finalizing it and getting the paperwork taken care of and making sure the warranties were in place, and they had to revisit it several times in order to make sure it was done correctly. So it's not necessarily that you're going to have a lemon or like a defunct car. It's just, going to completely break down on you, but it could be a longer process than if you had waited a couple more weeks.
Yes. And it's such a short-lived time frame. I always suggest people that, that you take your time and you make sure that you're doing what you really want and you're not just leaping into a process. So I think in general, this last bit of energy, that if you could focus in on really healing yourself, that's what the energy is, and not jumping to conclusions, and really making sure that you're doing whatever you are doing is right, really, with your higher source. So you're really connecting to yourself and making sure that everything is aligning with you and what you really want, versus what society wants from you, or what your ego wants from you. Always pay attention to that. So, yeah. Well, I hope everyone has a great full moon here. Remember that it is a super moon and it is going to be, it's the closest one of this year. So it's going to be the biggest one that we have, that we can see in our night sky. So just remember that it has a lot of that really big energy that's bringing us this ability to heal this last bit of stuff before we move in and kind of close out the cycle that Amy mentioned with this new moon in Virgo here. So we will see you again for the next moon forecast. And we hope that you also join us for our moon circle that we have coming up. And we will post more information about that below. We'll see you next time.